Welcome to the Invest Well Show. I'm your host, Michael Wall. Listen, we are joined with two wonderful guests today talking about the idea of investing in the next generation. It's so important. We live in a world today that is literally blanketed by challenges, problems, controversy, discord, almost anywhere we go. And I'm not talking about the app that kids use, Discord. I'm talking about challenges in our society today. So we have the Dean and Chancellor of Penn State Altoona University and a great guy, Steve Snowden, talking about how to fight out of adversity and what can you do to be a part of investing in the next generation. Today on the Invest Well Show. All right, so here we are, Dr. Ron Darboux. I had to look at it, make sure I get it right. So Dean and Chancellor, or Chancellor and Dean, I should say it that way, at Penn State Altoona. Really neat story. We're going to talk about that in just a second, but thanks for taking a minute to come all the way down here to beautiful Palm Beach where the weather is perfect to join us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here, and you're joined next to you by Steve Snowden. Now, a little full disclosure here, Steve is actually an advisor for one of the firms we have. The other hats we're wearing, Wall Private Wealth, U.S. Private Wealth, but he's had a really interesting journey going through the Sheets Fellows program, also went to Penn State Altoona. So we wanted to talk about that. Steve, thanks for taking a minute on the show as well.
I'm excited to be here, really excited.
Glad you're here. So let's talk about it initially. So the journey connected and how this all came together is, and I'm going to call him Ron if that's okay with you.
Sure.
So Ron actually is now the Chancellor and Dean, but we had some connection with alumni because Steve is obviously an alumni of Penn State. And you had some challenging situations along the way. So maybe let's start with you, Steve, and then I'll jump to Ron. And let's talk about your story. So growing up in Altoona a little bit, kind of what led you to Penn State, the benefit of connecting with the Sheets Fellows program, which, by the way, if you don't know the name Sheets, it's probably one of the largest private companies in America, done a great job, multi-billion-dollar company. And you ended up not only going and being a part of that, but you were the president of it.
Yep.
But you fought through a lot of things to get there, and you chose Penn State Altoona as your college of choice on the journey. Can you start and just talk us a little bit about what that looked like, maybe, Steve, when you're in high school and you're thinking about investing into your future, and where do you want to go? Talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I was really, in the beginning, a really homebody, I would say. As I was finishing up, I went to Altoona Area High School right in the neighborhood. And as I was finishing up there, actually that summer, towards the later end of that summer, my dad went to jail, longer sentence time. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was depressed. I was living with my grandparents. Praise God, though. They helped me out a ton. I have 4 younger siblings. So I was really in a place where I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had no purpose. I was just kind of going through the motions, and I was attending classes at Penn State Altoona. And then I got into a place where one of my friends introduced the idea of the Sheets Fellows program. So I was sitting in a class. He was telling me about a free field trip that you got to go on. And I was like, I want to go on a free field trip. So then I
if it's free, it's for me.
Exactly. Exactly. So I had no idea what I was getting into, went to one of the classes, and just the idea of talking about business, entrepreneurship, leadership. I mean, these were things that I didn't know made me excited, but I got really excited whenever I started to get involved. And one of the big things throughout that first year was some of the leadership committee coming in from the Sheets Fellows program, the president, the vice presidents, the innovation chair, and all these people that were doing such great things in college. And I was like, man, I would love to do that someday. And then throughout that process, I started getting a lot more involved, started connecting with a lot of great people.
And you were how old about at this time, by the way?
I was 18 years old at this time.
Okay, so you were still young.
Yeah, I was a really young
By the
guy
way,
at the time.
Steve, I mean, kudos to you, because at 18, I was thinking about, like, should I upgrade the rims on my car? So you were ahead of your time a little bit.
Yeah, and there was a lot that I was fighting through at that point. I was still the man of my house, living with my grandparents, 4 younger siblings. There was points where I was like, man, I should just drop out of school and start helping my siblings, helping my grandparents pay for all their expenses. And then, Mr. Sheets, he came and spoke to a class. First time I ever met and saw him. And I was like, wow, the opportunity to sit in front of someone that has such great success, great impact, and so much servant leadership in the community. Wow, this is an incredible opportunity. And I'm a very lucky guy for even being able to sit in this classroom. And then as things went on, I met my now wife, Katie, towards the end of that year. So yeah, it's funny because whenever you start getting involved in leadership and you start getting happy, and you have a lot of momentum, the right people just start to come into your life. And my wife Katie and her father Mike, I mean, they just completely poured into me, changed my life at the same time that I was, experiencing all these things at Penn State Altoona. And then I was in a place where I kept getting more involved. The EIRs, the entrepreneur residences, getting out of my comfort zone, meeting all these business owners in the area. I mean, I was really nervous at the time, but man, looking back, I grew so much by meeting all of those great people. And the alumni, meeting all these people that had success stories that came from Penn State Altoona. Because there was this this myth that, you had to go to Penn State, Maine to be successful. And seeing all these, being a guy who's working in the finance industry, taxes, high net worth families, I didn't have the confidence in myself because I was a marketing management major. And then meeting other people that were successful in the financial space that did the 2-2 program, didn't even major in finance, really lifted me up. And then the servant leadership, getting involved in the community, being a leader at that point, and just all of these things that started to add up. And then Mr. Sheets, luckily, through my senior year, I got directly mentored with him one-on-one. And man, just those experiences. And he was hard on me. It wasn't easy. I remember some of the times, he was ripping into me about things. I was like, man, this sucks. But man, I wouldn't change that for the world because it's led me and guided me and carved me into the person who I am today. And it's allowed me to have a lot of success at where I'm at now.
Well, anything worthwhile takes effort, right? Yeah. And you're a testament to that, Steve. And before we jump to the Chancellor and Dean here for a minute, a lot of people don't know. We were talking about this off show. A lot of people don't know some of the just short statistics about Penn State. A lot of times when they think of Penn State, they think of Maine. They don't think of necessarily Altoona. But even in Altoona campus and Penn State in general, it's not just about the Nittany Lions, the football team, right? I mean, that's a great thing. It's an awesome thing. Go to the whiteout games, hang out, all that kind of stuff. But we were talking off air about the CEOs and how many they produce. You want to mention that just for a minute?
Yeah, one of the largest. I don't know if they are the largest. I thought I saw that they were the largest amount of CEOs produced out of any university in the country, which I thought was a really cool thing.
Yeah, so a lot of great entrepreneurship and leadership developmental principles that are coming out of Penn State, and in particular Penn State Altoona. One of the things, Ron, I'll pivot to you. I grew up in that area as well. I was born in the Altoona Hospital back in the day before UPMC bought it, and lived in Hollidaysburg all my life, have a lot of family there. God really moved us down here. Amazing. It's been amazing. We still have lots of families that we serve there. But it's interesting to see the growth of Penn State Altoona over the years. I remember, I'm 45, 46 years old this year in September. And as I look back and see the growth of the university and the campus, it's been incredible. And now here you are taking the reins and leading it to the next generation. I'd love to hear just a minute about your story, how you got there. And what caused you to say, I'm going to take this baton and take it to the next generation?
So I'd love to do that. But before I do, let me just make a point when you mentioned growth. There's an element here of personal growth that Steve just sort of described, which I think is really important. And to me, there are two parts to that. One is having mentors who are willing to invest in the future generations, and recognizing the importance of paying that forward. But no matter how much work they do to provide those opportunities, it was important for Steve to take advantage of them. And he accepted the dressing downs that came, recognized the growth opportunities. So until we embrace those challenges, right, we do not grow. And all kudos to you for taking full advantage of those opportunities. Right, so just
totally agree. Thank you for stating that.
So my journey, so you must be hearing the mellifluous sound of my accent. I'm not.
Well, I wish I had it because it sounds kind of cool, right?
Yep, it is. I use it for all it's worth.
As you should.
So I grew up in the Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. I grew up poor, but for us in the Caribbean, college was free. You just had to make the grades, and I got into college. Taught for a couple of years in high school, followed my girlfriend to the United States. She got a scholarship to go to Morgan State, and I realized I'm not letting that one go.
Yeah.
And applied up and down the East Coast, got into graduate school in Baltimore. And I did that, and we left Baltimore. I worked for a number of years in higher ed as an instructor, got into leadership kind of reluctantly, became department head dean, eventually provost at Lock Haven. And in terms of the Altoona position, there are three things I think that really led me to the position. One is I've seen the importance of higher education in my own life. From where I grew up, I'm an example of what you'd call positive deviance. I should not be where I am, but I am because of the power of higher education. And what fuels me every day is the need to pay that forward, because I know I can't pay it back. So what wakes me up every morning is, how do I use my talents and my God-given skills and my opportunity to make sure that I do for others what was done for me.
I want to pause there real quick. That is what you just said is big. You can't pay it back. I think sometimes, years ago I sold books door to door when I went to college because I had to pay my way. And they talked about the idea of stop stewing and start doing. And I think sometimes, this just hit me, and I just had to share this. I think it's so important. Sometimes we can find ourselves stewing in an environment overwhelmed by maybe what's been done or what's been given to us, and we're not really doing the service to what's been given to us to pay it forward. That's huge, and I love that that's your mindset.
Yeah. And it is for me a responsibility. Gifts are given not for you to hold on to, but to pass on.
Overflowing stream.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's issue number one. Issue number two is my predecessor. And you mentioned how Altoona had grown. A lot of the growth happened under her leadership. So she had the vision and the support and the sheer will it takes to have the campus grow. So we increased the number of majors. We increased the campus footprint. She built a number of wonderful relationships, not only on campus, but in the community and in Florida, where we happen to be sitting. But the third thing is that we have a brand new president at the university, Dr. Neely Bender-Pudi, who recognizes that the growth of Penn State, right, the penetration of its brand, the increase in affordability and access, that is going to be driven on the Commonwealth campuses like Penn State Altoona. And she really has been very deliberate in terms of investing in the campuses. And those three elements together are my deep desire to give back to higher education. The wonderful toolkit that my predecessor left, and the mindset and the directive of the new president, it really has left me, and I'm a builder. This is what I do. My legacy in leadership in the academy has been building things. This is just an intoxicating opportunity. And when I interviewed, and certainly in my 7 weeks now on the campus and in the community, it is just ripe for this kind of growth. I've been very welcomed. And so I'm just deeply enamored with the campus, and I see tremendous potential over the next 3, 5, and you can't imagine what this will look like in 10 years.
If you had to pick one or two things, Ron, that you say, this is just, Mike, I'm so excited. Maybe it's the student body, maybe it's the facilitators, the teachers, the professors. If you had to pick something, I know it's probably hard to do, right? Pull it out, pick one or two things. But is there one or two things that really kind of says, man, I am really excited about the direction that we specifically are going, and here's why?
Yeah, I would say it's two things, and they're linked. I've had the good fortune of meeting with a number of the staff members, faculty, and students, and they're all good people, and they're there because they love it. In fact, I have faculty and staff members who've been there for 30 years.
Wow.
That means they've found a place that they love and they're loyal to.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that there is this real sense of energy on the campus. People are excited. And I'm not taking credit for that, but people are excited, and that is fuel for change. And I think people are in the mindset where they're excited about what's coming up. They're willing to roll up their sleeves and do the good work. It is the dovetailing of all the elements you need for success.
I love what you said there, as far as I'm not taking credit for that, because, we talked earlier off air, one of the guests that I had years ago was Vince Gill, and another quote that he said, I didn't share this one, but I'm going to share this one. He said, if people stopped worrying about getting the credit, we'd get so much more done. Yeah. And that's what I hear from you. I hear the vibe of appreciation, of thankfulness, of had the good fortune, all of this language, which I think is so important. Steve, I think about your situation. Obviously, the reason and the connection of it all. I mean, a lot of people, if you don't know this, I actually started my first company in Altoona. Right on Pleasant Valley Boulevard, right down from Reliance, but right down from Courtesy Ford. That's Wise Supermarket. We would walk across the street. I would anyways, and get protein shakes. But that's where we started, and God really grew us to a place where it made sense to kind of pivot and come down here and still have clients and families that we serve there. But I think about the opportunity, Steve, for you, not only with Penn State, but also this Fellows Program, and how impactful that was, and you kind of getting direction and being open to leadership along the way. And as you see where you were in the university at the time, and then now obviously having communication with Ron and some of his vision moving forward, what I would wonder would be one or two things that you're excited about of where the vision of Penn State's going to go in the future and how that's going to affect really investing in the next student body to come.
Yeah, I know one of the things that Marianne and I spoke about the other night at dinner was, the alumni, really bringing them into the picture, allowing people to go through and find and choose mentors that are in their space, other people that have graduated from Penn State Altoona or other places at the campus, and, get right into what they have for the vision in their life. Find someone who's doing what they're doing, building what they want, or even allow them to experience what they think they want, and they may choose to differ onto a different route. So that's one of the things I'm really excited about. I think the alumni and bringing them together and really building a powerful group that wants to get involved in the next generation is going to be really key for these next up-and-coming students. And I think the other thing is really, I'm passionate about the Sheets Fellows program. I'm passionate about what Donna Bond, Paul Cooney, and Steve Sheets are doing to those young students, because they don't realize what is happening with them growth-wise right now. But in 5 years, whenever they look back, they're going to say, wow, what a foundation they built for me, and how that has just slingshotted me into my career. These are skills that a lot of people learn from 22 to 30 or 22 to 35, and they're getting it jam-packed into 4 years.
I would love to hear one other thought, and then I'm going to switch to Ron for a question, Steve, from you on how you feel that training, that experience, from which, by the way, we keep talking about a variety of different things, but it's I think this is important to note. If you missed it earlier, it's important to note that the Sheets Fellows program is only available at Penn State Altoona campus. That's one of the kind of things that's, I think, super important to note. But when you take a look at that, right, obviously me sitting here as your employer in a lot of ways, we work as a team. I really call it that, because we can't do it. I can't do it by myself, what we're called to do. But as you came to now connect with us, from your perspective, how do you think that prepared you, gave you some motivation, gave you the work ethic, the drive? There's been a lot of learning in your first, year and a half here, and you've continued, by the way, to be moldable, as I'm calling you out on things. You've done a great job there to help you improve and grow. But you came with a different sense of vigor. I'll never forget, Ron, he was the first person I ever hired that for his Zoom meeting during the interview, he sent, it was my staff, but then it got to me, sent me an agenda for the Zoom meeting that I was interviewing him on. I was like, okay.
That's bold, man. That's bold. That's bold.
This guy's different. So talk about that preparation. I think that's so important.
Yeah, so one thing that's popped in my mind is Zig Ziglar's quote, if you see a turtle up on a fence post, you can rest assured that sucker didn't get there by himself. And I knew that I didn't get here by myself. I knew that Steve Sheets and all the other mentors that I had in school, all the people that I've met in the business community, my father-in-law, my mom, all these people that have really structured and built into me and poured into me in so many different ways. I immediately came to Michael and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know, what it's going to look like. I don't know how I'm going to make my first dollar, but I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to be teachable. And it allowed me to be teachable, because I feel like a lot of times whenever people go in just for the education, which is a great thing, they come out and they feel like they know everything. I came out with the mindset of I know nothing, and I'm ready to grow.
Life is a journey of learning, right?
Yep.
I love that. And by the way, proof is in the pudding. He came in and came on board. Kudos to Steve. This is how we do it here anyways. Everybody's different, but 100% straight commission, because you got to want it. You got to want to go get it. And he ended up almost in the top, actually rated about the top 20% of all highest paid financial advisors in the country in his first year. Hello. Good job, Steve. Pretty cool, right? Teachability, work ethic. And the cool thing is we're adding tons of value to the families we're serving, not only financially, but tax mitigation, et cetera. Ron, I would love to hear, and I'm going to let you land the plane. When you think about culture, you come from a different country, so you have a lens on this that I don't have in a lot of ways. But when you think about culture and the flexibility, and when I say culture, I'm talking specifically about Penn State Altoona now, talking about how they were open to being moldable and shiftable, when probably a lot of people were throwing stones at them saying, you probably shouldn't do that, or who do you think you are? You're a little bigger than your britches, all these other things. But they had a vision that now you're going to continue to carry, and I get that sense that it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful future. And that vision is we're going to stay open to what works. and open to adding value to our students and not caring about the naysayers out there that are going to throw stones because they're not thinking outside the box. They're not thinking for the future. They're not thinking of adding more value to their people around them. And you're in a place where you're saying, I want to carry that baton of openness. A lot of colleges, a lot of universities, a lot of campuses would have said, you know what, hey, Sheets, that's great, awesome, but we got this. We don't need you. You know, do you know who we are? and that's not the mantra of what you guys have done. And I get that sense that you're going to stay open and really look to kind of continue to drive value. Why is that so important when you talk about culture?
Yeah. So let me say two things. One, and you mentioned, the naysayers. One of my favorite sayings is that obstacles are those things you see when you take your eyes off the prize.
That's
and
good.
I say that to my kids all the time. You don't take your eyes off the prize, right? Because you keep that as your North Star. The reality is that higher education has tremendous value. And I think we are at a point, and a lot of it is self-created, where there is now doubt in the public's mind of the value of a higher education.
I would agree, yeah.
And that is something that we are culpable, I think, for doing. And part of it is because we have not been in resonance with the students and the families who depend upon us as a vector, right, to a better future. Nor have we been in true resonance with employers who are telling us we need a workforce that is versatile, that is prepared, that is agile. And we have not traditionally, and certainly in the last 20 years or so, done a really good job of doing that. And I think what is really important for us to recognize is that higher education is at its core a service industry. We live to serve, right? We are serving young men and women. We are serving their parents. We are serving employers. We are serving a community that needs an informed and engaged citizenry. And it is our job to reconfigure ourselves as is necessary so that we get back to a primary and sole purpose, which is to serve our stakeholders. And that cannot happen if, as your stakeholders are evolving, you don't evolve, right? So you need to evolve to basically keep in resonance with the people you're trying to serve. There is not an option, right? In higher education, either you evolve or you die. And death is not an option because there are too many people who depend upon us. And that is a message I learned very early in leadership in higher education. There is no choice but to make sure that you're adjusting, that you're asking students. And my definition of students is much wider. Yes, we will always be serving the traditional students who are coming out of high school, but there is an underserved swath of the population. These are adult learners and return learners who need to be reskilled and upskilled, that higher education has, to its chagrin, almost turned its back on. We can't keep doing that. Right? There are people who need us just as much as the traditional aid student. And there are employers who need them. And our job is to be a conduit to opportunity. So we basically need to evolve, to continue to evolve and to listen to the folks around us, asking students, what do you need? Asking employers, what do you need? What skill sets do you require? What are the priorities? And we make sure we provide programming with their assistance to move students from one end of the pipeline to the other. Right? We need to watch what's happening in our society, in our socio-political arena, and make sure we're generating individuals who will be part of solutions. One of the things I say all the time is if you look around at some of the big challenges that confront us, and you have to look no further than our, thank God, coming out of a pandemic that literally brought the world to its knees. And how do we get here? Well, we got here because of biologists, virologists, organic chemists, statisticians, doctors, nurses, physician assistants. I mean, you name it. There were folks who were prepared, they were college educated, who literally did nothing less than save the world, who did nothing else but save the world, right? The world is in a state of sort of political flux. We need the next generation of leaders to come in and steady it. Right? We're at a time where we have an unstable climate, where we're looking for clean, renewable energy, where we want food and clean water for all. Those things do not happen by accident. And I make this point all the time. My generation, the baby boomer generation, I'm older than you are, and a lot older than you. But my generation is leaving the workforce at the rate of 110,000 a week. That's the population of Altoona and State College leaving the workforce every week. And if we do not train the next generation of scientists, engineers, and doctors, and business leaders, and politicians, what are we leaving behind?
Yeah.
Right? Whose hands take the steering wheel?
Yeah.
So it is the responsibility, it is the privilege, it is the burden of higher education to train the next generation, to invest in the next generation.
Yeah.
Right? And you don't have to look much further than this young man to my right to see how well that investment can pay off.
Right.
Right? And so for all of the faculty and staff who support our students, for all of the donors who support our students, for all of the alumni who are willing to give of the time and the treasure and the talent, this is a prime example. It pays off in the end. And if we had more people like this, I mean, I think where our world is headed is going to be a much better place. Right? So, I love the idea of investment, and investment does not always have to be monetary, although we are never going to turn that away.
Yeah.
But investing in your time and talent, I mean, it goes a long way.
Yeah.
And taking a young person who you recognize, and maybe the person doesn't even recognize they have the talent in themselves, but you've been there, you've walked the walk, so you can see the seeds of it.
You help them bring it out.
You help them bring it out.
Right.
And you help them bring it out by challenge.
Yeah.
Because it's only when we are challenged that we grow.
That's sustainable growth.
Absolutely.
It's interesting, and I learned this years ago. Dale Carnegie once said, which I love, he was asked the question, how is it that you were able to pay so many millionaires? Or hire so many millionaires? And he's like, well, they weren't millionaires before they started for me. and they said, well, how are you able to train and develop people in such a way that you were able to pay them enough money that they became millionaires? And he's like, you train and develop people the same way that you mine for gold. When you go into the mine and you're looking for gold, you're not looking for a bunch of dirt and rocks. But that's what you have to move out of the way and be committed to that process until you find the gold. And I love the fact that what you're saying as far as investing into the future generation, I'm going to kind of land the plane with this, because my challenge to you as you're watching and listening to this is to say, what is my part in this process? Maybe you're not the chancellor and dean of a campus for Penn State. Maybe you're not an advisor like Steve is here, helping families, protect, grow, and reduce taxes on their wealth. Maybe you're a house mom. Maybe you're a janitor. Maybe I don't know what you are or where you are, but it's going to take all of us to come together and say, you know what, in order to really shift this culture and move, we have to think about the idea of what I love Dennis Waitley says one time, which is his goal in life, and we have adopted this here, his goal in life is to plant shade trees under which he will never sit. It's the idea of paying it forward. It's the idea of being open to ideas. It's the idea of realizing that, guess what? We're probably not all going to agree on everything, but that's okay. That's why Baskin-Robbins has 36 or 37 or 39 or whatever it is flavors. If it was all vanilla, we would get bored. I can guarantee, Chancellor, that you and I probably eye to eye see things in some areas differently. But that's okay. He grew up in a different culture, in a different land, from a different lens. We have to understand that it's about, let's find the areas where we can come together and grow and not just focus on where we are separate. So important. So listen, I'm gonna look, make sure I get it right. Dr. Ron Darboh, got it right, Chancellor and Dean, Penn State Altoona. Thank you for taking a minute. You rode your bike all the way down. No, I'm just kidding. To be on the show. I got to be honest with you, it was a pleasure.
Thank you. The pleasure was mine.
Really enjoyed it. Steve, I see you every day.
Still
always
exciting.
A pleasure.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
Great words, great insight. Hey, and as always, I want to challenge you with a couple things here as we land the plane. This show encouraged my heart. I hope it did yours. And I want to challenge you to do this. Probably all of you, whether you're listening to this via podcast, Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening to it, or you're watching on YouTube, or if you've seen it directly at investwellshow.com, do me a favor. There's probably 3 or 4 or 5, maybe 10 people that you know in your contact list on your phone that maybe are discouraged right now. Maybe they're a little downtrodden or thinking, you know what, I don't feel higher education is the way, or where do we go? Or is there a place where my kids can go where they can get the kind of education they need to be inspired and spurred on, like you saw with Steve here, for the future? I'm going to challenge you to share this show with them. Share it with them. That's how we get the word out. That's how we continue to encourage the multiplication effect. We've heard about it before, and I want to challenge you to do that. And as always, my desire and goal is really to challenge you to live on purpose so you can live with purpose. Be blessed. Have a great one. Talk to you soon.